orchestrated fresh narrative with vetted names, Vermont setting, and fraud-centered mystery, orchestrated fresh narrative with vetted names, Vermont setting, and fraud-centered mystery. The envelope showed up on a Tuesday, slid across the laminate of a diner table by a woman I had never seen in my life, and by the time I understood what it meant, I had stopped trusting my own son. I want to tell it the way it happened, because for a long while afterward nobody believed me, and I have learned that the truth doesn't get easier to say if you wait. I was 64 that fall, a widow of 11 months, living on the same 40 acres in the northeast kingdom of Vermont that my husband and I had bought when Nixon was still in office. We paid $4,000 for it in 1971, and people told us we'd lost our minds. Walter built half the house with his own hands. He was a quiet man, a machinist by trade, the kind who fixed everything twice so it would never break again. When his pickup went off Route 14 into the Black River that February, the sheriff's office called it ice on the bridge, and a man who shouldn't have been driving at his age. I signed papers. I let them tell me what kind of death he'd had. I didn't have it in me to argue. That Tuesday I was at the Birches, the little diner out past the feed store where the highway drops down to 2 lanes and the spruce come right up to the shoulder. I'd been going every week since the funeral because the coffee was bad in a comforting way and the owner, a heavy-set man named Pete, never once asked me how I was holding up. My son had driven me. He and his wife had insisted on it lately. They'd started showing up, calling it concern. "You really ought to think about letting the place go, Mom," my daughter-in-law said, stirring a tea she wasn't drinking. She had a way of making suggestions sound like things already decided. 40 acres is a lot of upkeep for one woman. The taxes alone. My son nodded along the way he always did when she talked. He has his father's hands, but none of his father's patience. "We just worry is all," he said. "What if you fell out there? Nobody'd know for days." I gave them the smile I'd been practicing for a year, the one that costs nothing. "I've kept that land 41 years, I said. "I imagine I can keep it through one more winter." They got up to settle the check together, leaning close at the register, talking low the way they'd been doing more and more. I stayed to fold my napkin and find my keys, and that's when she sat down across from me. She was maybe in her 50s, gray hair pulled back hard off her face, wearing a heavy wool coat that was wrong for a heated room. Her eyes didn't move around the way people's eyes do. They came straight to mine and held there. "You're Walter Pruitt's wife," she said. Not a question. My heart was already going. I was. She set a thin manila envelope down on the table between the sugar and the salt. Her hand shook a little when she let go of it. "You'll need this tonight," she said, almost too quiet to hear. "Don't open it here. Don't open it here. Don't open it in front of them." I opened my mouth to ask how she knew my husband's name, who she was, what she meant by them. But she was already standing, already moving for the door, and by the time I got to my feet, she'd stepped out into the gray afternoon and was gone. No car that I saw, just gone. My son came back to the table. "Everything all right?" "Fine," I said, and I slid the envelope into my purse before he could see it. My hands wouldn't hold still. The ride home was 30 minutes of nothing. Weather, the price of heating oil, my daughter-in-law mentioning, again, a lovely community over in Beret with assisted living and no stairs. They dropped me at the head of my gravel drive and declined to come in, which they never used to do. I stood there a long minute after their taillights disappeared, listening to the wind work through the spruce. Feeling, for no reason I could name, watched. I went inside and I locked the door. I hadn't been a door-locking woman before. Walter and I left the place open for 40 years. I locked it now, and I didn't fully understand why. I put the envelope on the kitchen table and I sat across from it like it might do something. The house ticked and settled around me the way old houses do. Outside the window, the light went out of the day, slow, and then all at once. I waited until full dark to open it. I can't tell you why I waited. Maybe some part of me believed that if I left it sealed, it would stay just paper. Inside there was a key, a small heavy brass thing. Old, the kind that opens a safe deposit box or a strong box. Worn smooth where a thumb would press it, wrapped in a twist of tissue. And there was a strip of lined paper, folded once, with handwriting on it I didn't recognize. Neat, careful, pressed hard into the page. 11:47 tonight. When it rings, don't speak first. Don't call anybody. That was all. No name, no reason. I checked the stove clock. It was 8:45. I had 3 hours. I went around the house and I checked every window latch and both doors. And then I sat back down. By 10 o'clock, I'd given up pretending to fold laundry. I turned the brass key over and over in my palm, trying to imagine what it belonged to. At 11, I shut off every light but the one over the sink, and the kitchen got deep and strange in the corners. My phone sat face up on the table. At 11:46, my own pulse was so loud in my ears I almost didn't hear the ring. It came at 11:47 exactly. No name on the screen. No number. I picked up on the second ring, and I didn't speak. There was breathing first, slow, close to the phone. Then a voice came through, low and bent out of shape, like it was pushed through some kind of machine. But underneath the distortion, I knew it the way you know a smell from your childhood. Instant and total and impossible. It was my husband's voice. I had heard that voice across 41 years of kitchens and trucks and hospital waiting rooms. I had heard it tell me he loved me and tell me bad news and hum off key in the shower. My knees went. I had to put my hand flat on the table. "Adeline," it said, "don't trust the boy. Don't trust his wife. And don't trust the deputy. Not Holloway." I pressed my hand against my mouth. "You're not safe in that house. It's the land they want. They need it sold, and they need you gone before anyone looks underneath it." "Who is this?" I finally got out. My voice came apart. "This isn't funny. Walter's dead." A pause. A breath, ragged. "I don't have long. If I talk too long, they find this line." The voice tightened. "I didn't die the way they told you. It wasn't ice and it wasn't my age. And if you let them push you off this place, everything I left will be gone with it. They'll erase it." "Erase what?" I whispered. The line cracked and roared. The voice broke up, came back for one piece of a sentence. "It's under your feet, Adeline, and you don't have much." And then the call dropped. I sat there with the dead phone against my ear until the screen went black. I checked the call log with shaking fingers. There was nothing there. No record. As if the call had never come. But my hands knew. My chest knew. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the table and watched the gray come up over the field. And I understood one thing. All the way down to the bone, whatever had killed my husband was not finished. And it was a great deal closer to me than I had let myself believe. My son came the next morning without calling. He'd always called first. It was a thing his father drilled into him. You don't just show up at people's houses. He pulled in a little after 8 like the place was already his. He carried in 2 coffees and a careful smile. "You look beat, Mom." "Didn't sleep," I said. He sat across from me, and his eyes moved around the kitchen, slow, like a man taking inventory. They stopped on the door to Walter's workshop, a half-second too long. "We need to talk," he said. I waited. "Krista and I have been going over your situation. The property, the money, your health." "My situation?" "You've been on your own a long time now. Gentle, rehearsed. This place is a millstone. You don't have to keep proving anything." There it was again, almost word for word. "I'm not proving anything," I said. "I just live here." He blew out a breath. "The taxes are climbing every year. The roof's going. Insurance on a place this remote is murder. If something happened to you out here—" "Something like what happened to your father," I said. He went still, just for a beat too long. "An accident," he said. "A fall. A spell. You're not a young woman." My daughter-in-law arrived an hour later, also unannounced. She didn't sit. She stood by the door, scrolling her phone like she had somewhere better to be. "I took the liberty of pulling your account statements," she said, not looking up, "just to see where things stand." "You had no business doing that." She smiled. "As your son, he has a right to know. And frankly, Adeline, you're burning through your savings faster than you can afford. It looks to me like grief is clouding your judgment." "I'm fine. Dot bring." "Are you, though?" she said, soft as anything. My son leaned in. "Mom, maybe we ought to talk about a conservatorship. Just temporary. Just till things settle." The kitchen went very quiet. The refrigerator hummed. "A conservatorship," I repeated. "It's only a safeguard," my daughter-in-law said quickly, "to make sure the right decisions get made." The voice from the night before was loud in my head. "Don't trust them." "You don't want to protect me," I said. "You want to run me." She sighed like I disappointed her. "It doesn't have to be ugly. Sell the place, move down to Bear, and all of this just goes away." "And if I won't?" My son looked at the floor. My daughter-in-law looked right at me. Then we move ahead without your consent, she said. She came a step closer and dropped her voice. Farms are dangerous, Adeline. Old women have accidents all the time out here. It would be such a shame if something happened before any of this got sorted. I stood up so fast the chair went over backward. Get out of my house. My son's face came apart. Shock. Then something else. Mom. Now. They left together. She was already on her phone in the drive. He looked back at me once through the window, and what was on his face was not worry. It was arithmetic. I locked the door behind them and stood there a long time with my back against it. For the first time since Walter died, I understood it clearly. They were not afraid for me. They were afraid of what I was standing on top of. I didn't cry. I cleaned. I washed the 2 coffee cups they'd touched. I wiped the table. I swept a floor that didn't need it, like neatness could hold the world together. And when there was nothing left to scrub, I went into Walter's workshop and shut the door behind me. It still smelled like him, cedar and cutting oil and old coffee. I'd kept the door closed for months because grief lived in there. Now I understood something else lived in there too. I started with his file cabinet. At first it was all ordinary, tax bills, the deed, equipment manuals, warranties he kept for tools he'd thrown out years ago. But Walter taught me to slow down and look at a thing the way he looked at a broken motor. And when I slowed down, I saw that the dates were wrong. Papers had been moved in the last months of his life. Not thrown out. Refiled. Lined up. A man getting his affairs in an order he wanted found. Behind the deed folder there was a thin one I'd never seen. Bank statements. Cash withdrawals, a few hundred at a time, every few weeks, always under the amount that makes a bank file a report. Always stopping about 2 weeks before the bridge. My husband hated cash. He kept receipts for it too with caulk. If he was pulling money out quietly, it was because he didn't want a trail to follow. I sat down on his stool and made myself remember the last year of him. The way he'd taken to walking the back acres alone at dusk. The way he'd started padlocking the old root cellar he'd never locked in his life. The night he came in past midnight with mud to the knees and told me it was a drainage problem. The time headlight swung across the back field and his whole body went rigid at the window. At the bottom of the door, under everything, there was a sheet of yellow legal paper with my name across the top in his hand. Addie, if you're reading this, I couldn't fix it in time. I'm sorry. Don't ask your questions where there are ears. What I found is buried, and the only thing keeping you safe was that you didn't know it. I had to set it down, buried, the same word the Boyce had used. His computer took me an hour. He guarded passwords the way some men guard money. I tried our anniversary. I tried the dog we'd had 30 years ago. Then I tried the address of the first apartment we ever rented on Pleasant Street, before we were married, and the screen opened. There were emails he'd archived instead of deleting to a criminal defense attorney, 3 states away in Pennsylvania. Short, guarded notes. No detail. Just dates and confirmations and the word retainer. Why on God's earth would Walter, who'd never had so much as a parking ticket, be paying a criminal lawyer? I kept going. There were photographs. Night shots of the back of our land, tire tracks in mud I didn't recognize. A car with no plate I knew. The mouth of the old root cellar, propped open, with crates stacked inside that had no business being there, and a folder of scanned pages, letterhead from a company called Greenfield Senior Annuity Partners, a name that meant nothing to me, with my son's signature at the bottom of one of them. My phone buzzed in my pocket, an unknown number. You're doing right. Don't confront them. They're already watching. I stared at it until it went dark. I didn't go outside the rest of that day. I watched the land through the windows instead. The tree line, the rise behind the north field, the stretch of ground Walter had always told me to stay clear of after dark. For years I thought that was him fussing over my footing. Now I knew different. Late in the afternoon, a gray sedan I'd never seen rolled past the foot of my drive. It didn't slow, didn't turn in. An hour later, it came back the other way. They're already watching. Just after sundown, the phone rang again, and this time the voice wasn't bent or distorted. It was a man's, plain and tired. If you're alone, don't hang up, he said. Who are you? Somebody your husband came to when he ran out of people he could trust. My name's Hollis Vance. I can't stay on long. He let out a breath. Walter asked me. If anything happened to him, to keep an eye on you until you were ready to hear it. He said his boy wouldn't wait forever. I lowered myself into a chair. There's an old root cellar on your back acres, Hollis said, and below it, a dry well, hand-dug, older than your house. Your husband widened it out years back for cold storage and forgot about it. Nobody'd ever look there. My mouth went dry. Your son found it. Couple years ago. Realized it was the kind of place a man could keep things he didn't want found. He paused. You ever hear of Greenfield Senior Annuity Partners? I saw the name today, I whispered. It's a fraud. They sell phony annuities to old people across 3 states. Folks like you, Adeline, widows, retirees. Take the lump sums, move the money through shell accounts, mail the paper from a place nobody suspect. The farm was perfect for the paper end of it. Quiet, off any road, family land, so no questions. Your son ran the documents and the cash through that cellar. I thought of him sitting at my table that morning talking about my judgment. Walter caught on about 2 years back, Hollis went on. Cars where there shouldn't be cars. Fresh tracks after rain. He followed it till it ran underground. He photographed everything. Names, dates, the works. And then he did the worst thing he could have done. He confronted the boy, told him to stop or he'd take it to the state. Your son swore he'd walk away. But you don't walk away from a thing like that, I said. No, ma'am, you don't. Hollis was quiet a second. Walter wouldn't let it go. So they decided he was a problem. His truck didn't slide on ice. It got helped off that bridge. I was a half-mile back. I couldn't get there. Something inside me cracked, not loud, quiet, the way a stone splits along a seam that was always there. Why now, I said. Why are you telling me now? Because they're in a hurry. They want the place sold before spring. Once it changes hands and a developer fills that cellar with concrete, the evidence is gone for good, and your husband died for nothing. You bought yourself time by not selling. But they're done being patient. The line clicked dead. I sat in the dark a long while after that. The walls of my own house felt thin as paper. I went to the back window and looked out at 41 years of land that I had believed held nothing but memory and roots. And now I knew it held something rotten. And the worst of it wasn't in the ground. The worst of it was that the boy I rocked to sleep had chosen that rot over his own father, and he would not stop until somebody made him. The knock came a little after midnight. 3 slow taps, almost polite. I was at the table with the lights off. I didn't answer. It came again, and then my son's voice through the door. Mom, it's me. Open up. We need to talk. My heart slammed. Then a second voice, calm, official. Mrs. Pruitt, this is Deputy Holloway. We've had a welfare call. We just need to see that you're all right. The deputy, not Holloway. I moved to the window beside the door without throwing a shadow. To V. For a long time I kept asking myself where it all turned, and the honest answer is that it turned the day I decided to keep my eyes open instead of shut. Walter had handed me a trail, but a trail is only worth something to a person willing to follow it. I could have taken that brass key and locked it in a drawer and told myself an old woman has no business digging in the cold. Plenty of people would have. The reason I'm still on my land and the reason Brett and Krista answer for what they did is that I chose to look when looking was the harder thing. Nothing that happened was an accident of fate. Brett didn't fall into ruin overnight. It started small, with one shortcut he told himself didn't count, then another, until the man who'd sworn to walk away couldn't find the door anymore. That's how it always goes. You don't lose your character in one big moment. You trade it off in pieces so small you never notice the scale tipping, until one day you're standing in your mother's kitchen talking about accidents that aren't accidents. Krista didn't make him do it. She only found the soft place that was already there and pressed on it. What saved me wasn't luck, and it wasn't strength alone, though I needed strength to run through those woods at 64 with my hands bleeding. It was that I slowed down the way Walter taught me, and I looked at the dates, and I let myself add up what the numbers were telling me, even when the answer broke my heart. Seeing clearly is its own kind of courage, because clear sight shows you things you'd give anything not to know. I would have rather believed my son was only worried about my taxes. The truth cost me that comfort. But comfort built on a lie is just a slower way of losing everything. If I've learned anything worth passing on, it's this. Be the kind of person who won't trade their honesty for an easier night's sleep, because the small surrenders are the ones that bury you. Keep your wits about you and don't let anyone talk you out of what your own two eyes can see, especially the people who love you or claim to. And when the hard night finally comes, and it comes for all of us, don't wait to find out whether you can stand. Decide now that you will. I'm not bitter. I look out at my fields most mornings and feel something close to peace. But I keep the brass key in a dish on the windowsill, where I'll see it every day, so I never forget what it costs to know the truth, or what it would have cost not to.